When I started learning rock guitar, I had some of the usual heroes like Page and Hendrix. And sure, their solos like Wind Cries Mary and Stairway to Heaven influenced me a lot. But there's one relatively unknown solo that really had a huge influence on me and helped me improve. I'll tell you what it is and how and why it influenced me coming right up. Growing up as a fledgling guitar player in the 1970s, I loved Page and Hendrix, and Billy Gibbons, Peter Frampton, and even Steve Howe were huge influences on me too. But in 1989, I was watching a movie, Eddie and the Cruisers 2. Not really the greatest movie, but in one of the scenes, the main character starts off a song with this incredible solo. I instantly loved it and had to learn it. The song was Garden of Eden by John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, not exactly a household name. Gary Gramellini, the guitar player, was also not very well known. But it's a song and a solo that have been very influential with me, and I share it with my students often. But why? It's just a straightforward blues boogie. Yes, and that's one of the reasons why it's such a great learning tool, because it's so simple harmonically, and yet it's inventive and exciting the way that Gary plays it. So first, here's my approximation to what Gary played, and then after we'll cover the details of why it's so instructive and great to learn. Even if it's difficult to play at first, there's a lot you'll still get out of it. All right, let's first acknowledge that Gary puts on a clinic in basic blues rock phrasing. Lots of hammer-ons, slides, bends, vibrato, all great stuff. I particularly like the way that he would play a note and then slide right back into it. It's an absolutely great solo to improve your phrasing. You can come back to it again and again like I do. But the key learning point for me was that though it looks very complex because it goes all over the place, it's actually very, very simple. I've said this before, but when I learned the solo, I learned the minor and the major pentatonic scales all over the fretboard. You know what I'm talking about, all those shapes, right? And my thinking at that time was chords are for rhythm and scales are for soloing. So I would approach a solo thinking, what scale can I play over this? And that can be kind of cumbersome. Every time I want to shift from one place to another on the neck, I need to carry along lots of notes, so it tends to make me stay in one single place. But even more importantly, it can be limiting to only think in terms of scales, because chords are a great tool at our disposal to use for lead as well. In fact, you can understand this entire solo by using just one chord shape. This one right here shown for C7, or my favorite, the simplified version of that. Now, if I fill in some notes that I like to play over this chord, many of which are used in this solo, I get this. I know this looks complicated also, but I want to emphasize that you shouldn't try to memorize this. Instead, just think about the simple chord shape and experiment. Find moves around that shape that you think sound good. I call these chord moves. They don't have to be scales or arpeggios, although they certainly could be. They're any note that you think sound good, and that's why I call them chord moves. If you're willing to take the time to do that, then all you'll need to do to get around the neck is to carry around that simple chord shape. And that's exactly what's done in this solo. In the beginning over the C7, it's that shape at the 8th fret. And then over the F7, it's that shape at the 13th fret. And then over the G7, it's that shape again at the 3rd fret. And then it comes back to the C7 at the 8th fret again. When I realized that all I needed to do to play this whole solo was carry around that one simple shape, it was so freeing. And when I improvise, I largely do this today. But that's just the beginning. If you really want to use this idea to use it musically, click here, because I show how to use it in action. So click here. We'll see you in the next video, and we'll see you on down the road.